what we
Gets
did, I
old.
guess I'll start running, just doing a little bit of logistic stuff here. So when you go into the Kiko chat space, we have our agenda here. And I guess people have already been here about signing in on the attendee list, which is down here. Great, I see people are adding their names there. That's super. And we saw the Slido poll if you want to let us know where you are, and that's kind of fun. If you want to get the video, you click on the green button in the upper left there to get the video chat. In the agenda here, we have in blue, instead of doing the Slido polls, we just put the polls in here. And the idea is that, you know, we have these, like what EarthCube resources have you used? And you would just add a 1 there if you used one of those things. That was the idea with that. So we have 1 there and another one down here. How often do you use GitHub? The items in green are things that we'll be discussing in the breakouts. And so if you're looking through the notes, you can watch that and see, you know, in terms of thinking about what breakout you want to join. So the outline here is we'll start out with just a brief introduction that Kenton will do in a minute. And then we'll have a real short flash on 4 technical areas that we've been working on for EarthCube, after which we'll break out into 3 different breakout groups with those questions to see there. Here's the breakouts here. And the way we're going to do that was by having you put a letter in front of your name in the Zoom window. And if you don't know how to, hello?
There have been several people on a different Zoom link that I just switched to from here, including Mike Daniels, including Steve Young, and a few others.
So other people are ending up in that dev as well. How is that happening? Maybe Aaron can help people get out of there.
Yep.
Thanks, Aaron.
I will try to help people get out of there.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, so the breakouts, when we get to that point, you'll just, the way you do that is in the Zoom window. If you go to where your name is in the Zoom window in the upper right-hand corner of your little square in the Zoom window, there's a 3-button thing, and you can click on the 3 little dot blue button. You can click on that and rename yourself, and you just put the letter in front of your name, and that'll get you. Then Aaron will send people to the various breakout rooms. I think that's the extent of the logistics. We do have invite people to take notes. There's a place down here at the bottom. If there's anything that you think is interesting, important that comes by that you'd like to know, we'd sure appreciate it. So please add it there. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kenton to introduce the EarthCube Office technical team.
Thanks, Steve. So I'm Kenton McHenry. I'm serving as the technical lead for the new EarthCube Eco Office. You just heard from Steve Richard, and we also have Ilya Zaslowski, Mike Bobak, Dave Valentine, and Kevin Cookley, who are part of the team, and hoping to bring on a couple others in some special areas as well as we move forward. Basically what we're doing is we're carrying forward the mission from the previous offices in terms of making it easier to share and find relevant geoscience data. A big part of this is around this effort called Geocodes, which we'll get an update from later. There's also the Resource Registry in terms of identifying relevant tools in the geoscience community. And we've recently started to work on basically making notebooks kind of a research artifact more prominent in the work that we do, having a successful call for notebooks for our EarthCube annual meeting. And archiving those as publications, really, and as a way of finding these tools and using them. It's an ongoing experiment that we're going to continue pushing. Other than that, I think, Steve, you're also going to talk about some of the work we've been doing with regards to collecting some of the artifacts from EarthCube projects in GitHub and where we're going with regards to that. So a large amount of the effort has been basically in terms of bringing to light and exposing data and tools. And so we'll just give some highlights with regards to those aspects going forward. Did I miss anything, guys?
Sounds good.
Otherwise, I think Kevin's first, right?
Yep, over to Kevin.
Okay. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so the purpose of the EarthCube website, www.earthcube.org, is to answer the question, what is EarthCube? The website is a place to share information to researchers and to educate the public. It's a place for engaging the community, creating conversations, promoting sharing, and fostering media interests. Finally, its purpose is to increase the visibility of EarthCube. Okay, next slide, please. In 2020, we have begun a redesign of the website. The website redesign will focus on the following. We're going to focus on informing geoscientists and the public about EarthCube by featuring EarthCube products and researchers. The redesign will integrate with social media to attract traffic to the website. It will highlight the benefits of working with EarthCube products. It will increase functionality. The redesign will increase functionality of the website for researchers by highlighting EarthCube tools and products. And finally, we are going to de-emphasize the internal community content. The next slide, please. So the new redesign is going to focus on promoting EarthCube and not website maintenance. The current website is based on Drupal, and Drupal doesn't have the most stellar security record. There have been 5 security issues in the last 90 days, and each additional plugin may have its own security issues. We want to redirect efforts that have been spent on updating Drupal, tracking security issues, and assessing the website into promoting EarthCube. And we plan to have this new website redesign live by the end of this summer. And if anybody has any questions about the website, I'll be around to answer them. So those are my updates on the website.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, now I'll switch over to Mike to talk about the geocodes.
Well, yeah, at least the data set part of it. It's about general discovery, but I'll first talk about the dataset search, and then we'll move segue into the resource discovery. Next slide. So this is a free text search, kind of like a Google dataset search, but it's using all the metadata that's embedded in schema.org in JSON-LD format within all the landing pages of the geoscience data repositories that we have sitemaps for. We do a crawl via these sitemaps, and next slide. We're able to do simple, as I said, those simple free text searches and geo-bounded searches, and also have the ability for more advanced searches on combinations of any of the metadata that are coming up. Next slide. So one of the benefits over the dataset search is, instead of having terms that you're throwing in free text that could be matching any other non-geoscience discipline, this has a smaller pool to be dealing with, so you are hopefully getting somewhat better results. And then we also allow for the return metadata, not just by all the facets to constrain what you're searching, but then to give up the metadata so it can be combined with others in web standard way. So one of the first places we're looking to do that is with the resource registry, where we'll start to pair data with software resources. Okay.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit now about the resource registry, which is a project that was developed in parallel with the dataset registry, which a lot of you have probably heard of as the Project P418 that Doug Fils and Adam Shepard worked. So in parallel with that, Ilya Zavslavsky, Ruth Duer, and I worked on a resource registry as a collection of resource descriptions to extend the resources, the dataset resources, to also look at software, semantic resources like vocabularies, ontologies, glossaries, things like that, specifications, interchange formats, platforms, services, interfaces, the other parts of the cyber infrastructure system that can be useful for doing research projects, for implementing software for research, for executing research. So the idea was to have a catalog of these other resources that we could use for integrating with the data to enable a more seamless connection from finding data to being able to work with the data, and also to help promote the reuse of resources that people have developed in the context of EarthCube by actually making it possible to find out, what have people done. So some of the scenarios that the use cases that we were thinking about as we designed and implemented this were, first of all, how do we want to identify EarthCube resources as part of a way of saying, what is EarthCube? What have we done? To have a more systematic documentation of the resource characteristics to enable a more precise and accurate search across these things. It also gives us a way to have a sort of inventory of what we've actually got to identify gaps, and also to look for duplication of effort. We want to be able to find tools and APIs or things that will work with a given data set, or with software that can be assembled to develop other software components that will work together. And also to support maturity assessment when people are evaluating resources, to collect information about how often is this being used, has it been reviewed, what kind of comments have come back about this. So these are the kinds of scenarios that we want to implement through this resource registry, and in parallel with the data registry as part of this geocode. So the project finished last fall, and there's a final report, the links for it here. We developed a data entry form for putting new information into the registry. We have a scanner for viewing, for looking at what's there, and in a minute, Ilya Zavlowski will give us a quick look at what that looks like. There's also a Sparkle endpoint. We developed a set of controlled vocabularies that are all registered in the ESUP Community Ontology Registry, the core. And there's also project folders on the Google Drive, GitHub Repository, and documentation for these things that are all accessible on the web. So I'll turn it over to Ilya to talk a little bit more about the registration workflow and the viewer.
Yeah, just a couple of pictures here. So the project was very fast-paced because we happened to be sandwiched between government shutdown that resulted in like 6 months delay in funding, and the end of the previous EarthCube Project Office funding. So we ended up having like 6 months to develop all these modules, and necessarily we had to work in parallel. So we ended up with a loosely coupled system where each module calls another module as needed. Remember good old times when we cared about government shutdowns. Like that. Anyway, so you start with a form where you submit a resource. That's Google Forms. That form reads controlled vocabularies from another resource, and these controlled vocabularies can be independently updated. Then once you submit it also calls service that means identifiers, ARC identifiers, and adds them to the records. Then you create a JSON-LD file for the information that has been submitted. That JSON-LD file gets deposited into Google Drive, loaded into Object Store and Triple Store, and also automatically added to a user interface that you can use to search for resources. So all of these are independent modules that can be called actually. In this case, they are connected with Google Apps Script, but can be called independently. Next slide. And the client that I'm going to also show you, it's sort of a not very traditional search client. It's based on a system that I've been playing with for some time. Of course, you have a table view of the resources that you discover, but you also can look at those resources in the registry as collections of icons, sort them by any type of variable that has been added to resource descriptions. You can do structured query, you can look at network view, and you can also launch Jupyter notebooks for those resources. So as Kenton mentioned at the beginning, we are working towards creating a library of Jupyter notebooks that would demonstrate how EarthCube resources can be launched. And this mechanism of launching notebooks can be helpful here. Next. I guess I'm done.
Yeah, so that's the registry. The geocodes architecture includes that the dataset search and the resource registry. One of the things that I think would be interesting to talk about in the breakouts would be how those might be integrated better. The final tech project that we wanted to talk about was the work on the EarthCube Github Organization. The idea was to use this GitHub organization for EarthCube, which has actually existed since the beginning of the project, but it's really has been dormant basically since almost the first year that EarthCube was running. And the idea is to use this as an essential place to capture information about what's going on in the community as a way to have something to point at for technical people about, well, what is EarthCube? What have we got? And so through this GitHub organization, we're maintaining an EarthCube IO webpage that has information, but the other important aspects are we're collecting an inventory of GitHub repositories that EarthCube projects are using, focusing on finding repositories where there are actual software or product releases of various sorts that are suitable for reuse. And this repository inventory right now is compiled in a text-based, it's a CSV table in a GitHub repo, and then has a HTML view of that table that we can look at if you're interested in the breakout. There's an issue tracker that allows a way to propose new things to be added to the repo inventory, or to also bring in new content. And then the idea is that we want to have a place you can go to say, okay, what's going on with EarthCube? What are the repositories? Have a way to link to the repositories, particularly pointing at software or releases, if there are product releases available on GitHub. One of the other important things that we're doing, or a document that we have in this repo, is a set of recommendations for EarthCube projects in terms of what kind of content should be present in a GitHub repository to promote software reuse. And some of the basic recommendations here are, not surprisingly, it should be FAIR compliant, but what does that mean in practice more? And it's a lot of the important thing is the required documentation. And I don't know, a lot of you probably use GitHub. That's one of the poll questions that's in the Google document. But a lot of repositories, you've probably noticed, don't have a lot of information about what's actually there or how you might use it. So one of the things we're promoting is the idea that if we want to have these EarthCube product releases on GitHub, there should be some basic documentation present in terms of who's the producer, some kind of versioning, what the versioning policy is, what requirements are to run it, what data formats for input and output, what kind of dependencies there are, and importantly, what kind of licensing is applied. So this includes, products in the EarthCube registries, and then also other technical products. So the other condition, of course, is that the products need to be accessible online. So the link here points at this document with the recommendations for what should be in the GitHub repos for software, and software speaking broadly, right? That might include vocabularies, ontologies, specifications, all kinds of soft sorts of things, information resources that people are developing and maintaining using GitHub. So I think this is an important topic also. So at this point, that completes our quick flash through the various kinds of technical activities that we've been doing. What we would like to do now is to break up into smaller groups and actually have some conversation based on the questions that were in the Google Doc. There are links. There's a link for the breakouts in the Google Docs that point at the notes for each breakout, and in those notes we have the discussion points that we'd like to work on that breakout. So what we'd like to do now is as I mentioned earlier, in your Google window, you can in the Zoom window, sorry, where your picture or box is, you can go up to the little 3-dot button in the upper right and rename yourself and add a letter for which breakout you'd be interested in participating in. I think if you want to move between breakouts, you can chat to Erin, and she should be able to move you. Am I correct there, Erin?
Yep. So the deal is, in your breakout, you'll see a little where it says end now. It'll say come back to the main room, and you can just come back to the main room, and I will, and then either chat to me or just unmute yourself and tell me where you want to go, and I'll move you. So I'm seeing a few people. Okay, it looks like people are starting to rename. Thank you.
Thanks. And while we're doing that, if anybody has any questions at this point, we'd be happy to answer them if
There's
we
some
can.
questions in the chat.
Aha. In the chat. Let's go over here.
And if you don't want to go to a breakout, that's also fine. Just put a little X next to your name and I won't move you into a breakout.
Harvesting the, okay, so there's a question. Have you thought about harvesting required documentation from the repos in the future once people follow the guidance? And that's a great question. And it would be really nice if we could do that. I think there's actually some conventions that people are working on for how to put documentation in repos to make it harvestable. And that would be a good thing to do. But in the near term, I think our focus is going to be just on getting the documentation in there in the first place. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about that or comments.
I put a comment in there, Steve, about code meta being the effort that's trying to get people to standardize software metadata. So
yes,
CMIT.org compliant way. Yep.
Right. And that's actually one of the things I would be interested in exploring in the breakout. I've looked a little bit at code meta. And I'm, would be curious. I mean, a couple of points about that is where's the overlap with what code meta is doing with what we've been doing in the resource registry, and then also thinking about how we can use that for this the information in the GitHub repos to promote reusability. So that I think thanks for that.
Yeah, Dan Katz, who helped with the notebook effort, also had mentioned it as well. Yeah, I think he had some familiarity.
There's the Force 11 group has a code meta task force trying to make code meta relevant to different domains and disciplines and make sure that it's usable. So Dan's part of that, as well as Chu Hong at the SSI, and then folks at Martin Fenner at Dataset. So and a bunch of other folks.
Okay, Steve, so I'm ready to go with the rooms. There are a few people who haven't renamed, and I can help you once I open these rooms up. I can get you into a room.
All right, thanks, Aaron.
So ready to go? And I've got it
Yes.
for 40 minutes total, because that's what your agenda said. So it'll go for 38 minutes, and then there'll be a 2-minute countdown before it yanks you back into the room. So when you see the end of the timer, you still have 2 more minutes.
All right, and don't forget to take some notes in the notes documents for the breakout, and be ready for a short report back when we return. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, I will see you later. So Karen, Ellen, Gary, Mike, you guys didn't have letters next to you. And Mike, you might be muted. Oops, I can hear you.
Oh yeah. I'm going to run the dataset search one. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just joined late, so I confess to not knowing what's going on or what my options are. So I can
hang on 1 second, and I can tell you what your options are. Okay, so for people who just joined, so Lisa, I see you've got a D. I'll move you. So let's get organized, Aaron.
Oh, I see them. D, R, or G. Is that right?
Yep, and they stand for Dataset Registry and Search, Resource Registry, and G is Organization GitHub.
Okay. I would like to go to D if I can. I can try to change my name.
I got it. You're gone. Fang, Ellen, Gary, Dataset Registry, Resource Registry, or the Organization GitHub. Or hanging here, also fine. So Fang or Ellen. Ellen, I can put you in D, you bet. And yeah, if you just want to put it in the chat to me, So Daniel, we are in breakouts for the dataset registry, the resource registry, and the EarthCube organizational GitHub. Do you have a preference on where you want to go?
Well,
Sorry.
put me in data registry, give it a try.
Okay.
I'm phoned in.
Yep. And if you don't like it, just come back to the main room and I'll switch you around. Okay. Okay.
Bye.
And Daniel, thoughts where you want to go?
Wherever you so desire to send me.
Okay. I'm going to send you. So the GitHub is a pretty small group with Mike and Steve, or the resource registry with Ilya and Wida. Of those two, do you have a...
Mike Daniels, send me over there.
Okay, I'll send you over there. You got it.
I can cut this organization wherever.
Perfect. Okay. You're going to G. And then Lynn.
Yes, I couldn't
You
find...
can just hang here with me.
You know, that's fine. You and I can hang out. I'm
going to stop the recording right now. Hang on.
Yeah.
And or one or two of us brought up in the aggregation talk is everyone doesn't have to aggregate everybody else, but I mean, you have links into other, you know, you have a more link data idea, links into other people's data. And then one of the things I've been interested in, and I think that we'll be talking about more, Steve, that Matt brought up. Actually, I want to find out, I still both want to find out about data one more, but the thing that he was mentioning about the more high level, like Google and other, you know, just schema.org searches getting in the ballpark to all sorts of places that have more vertical, really well-defined data sources. But then I was just trying to throw out how, you know, bridging that gap, and I'm sure he would have a lot more. In fact, some of the SemWeb ESIP sessions, we don't talk about that too much. But it would be, I'd be interested. I think I caught the presidential address, and one of the things that was brought up is that maybe we should start using Kiko Chat apart from ESIP for some of the clusters. That was one of the things I'd like to, if we did, that would be one of the things I'd like to chat with people about. So also, as you can see, there's also another aggregator there that I might only know by name. I really don't know much about them, but I'm going to be looking at as well.
Copernicus, you mean?
The Copernicus.
All right. Any other? No, okay. Let's switch over to breakout 2. And I think Ilya, are you?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We had a wonderful conversation. We had a fairly small group, just 4 people, including me, and also Cassie, Jackie, and Wida. But it was a very interesting discussion and very useful, I would say. So some notes. What is important to have in a registry? I think one of the ideas was that the ability to match to match your model requirements with the types of data that you get. So essentially the matching between data descriptions and descriptions that we find in a resource registry would be one of the useful characteristics. So this is something that we've been planning to do later on once we have actually we have our act together in terms of data registry and resource registry themselves, and then we will work on matching them. The bottlenecks for adding data to ECRR. I guess lack of semantic support is a general concern of any data entry terms, and lack of documentation was also mentioned. But the key thing is motivation. Why would people want to spend time entering information about their resources anywhere unless they are strongly motivated to do that. I love this term, altruistic metadata deposition, that that Jakey mentioned. How we can make it have, well, I shouldn't say less altruistic. Altruistic is good, but rewarding, more rewarding, and the rewards should be clear in terms of some science advance that we can support with that. Maybe in other ways. But this seems to be more important than actually focusing on improvements that sort of go along purely technical lines. What information is missing, and what are some additional registries that would be useful to add? These are two related things, and they've been several SUC suggestions about what needs to be added, and perhaps an interesting direction for the registry would be to have partner relationships with other registries so that we can do federated search and do not have to enter the same information twice at least. But that would require some collaboration at the level of mapping of different fields that we have, and making sure that we can interpret what's in the other registries and be sufficiently attuned to what each domain needs from their collections. And yes, we have some volunteers to eventually submit resources to the registry, which is the most important outcome. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie and Cassie and Rita for input.
All righty, breakout 3. We were discussing the EarthCube organization. So there was some discussion about different ways of bringing various projects, disparate projects in EarthCube together under one organization. And right now we had just been sort of working on having a set of links, but it was brought up that during the previous office that actually started trying to bring EarthCube projects into one umbrella, but they were all under different organizations. So for instance, Chords is EarthCube Projects -Chords, as opposed to having one organization with all the projects within that, which is seems like what we were shooting for is a better way to point people at something, to say what is there in EarthCube. Leslie Sue, she mentioned that the USGS is working on a similar effort for models, trying to bring together software for running models. But the problems they're having is that the code's in different repositories. They're running GitLab now. They have users who are running in GitHub or other repositories, and it's challenging to get people to move environments like that. In terms of it was also pointed out that the EarthCube Resource Registry registers software, and the question was whether having these projects registered in the resource registry would not solve the same problem and be sufficient. And the counter argument there is that right now the resource registry is not widely known or used, whereas GitHub is pretty widely known and used, and people are a lot more likely to go to GitHub and search for EarthCube than they are to go to the resource registry at this point. Maybe that'll change over time if we're lucky. So there's a lot of discussion about how we could bring these EarthCube, make the EarthCube software projects more visible, and agreement that I think that there needs to be some kind of more standardized and complete documentation about what to use. Another suggestion was that we might use badges for EarthCube projects. So a lot of ideas were thrown out. We just had, again, it was a small group: Mike Daniels, Ziheng Sun, myself, Leslie C. And I think it was just 4 of us. But it was a good discussion, and thanks everybody. So any other comments from the breakouts that anyone would like to bring up? Well, I switch back here. There's our list. So our final item on the agenda here is takeaways, and then you probably are familiar now with from the other EarthCube ESIP sessions this week. Anybody have any suggestions for what takeaways might be from our discussions here?
The one thing I saw in both mine and Ilya is that we both mentioned federation, and then he mentioned altruism, but you could also call it something along the lines of showing the value, like.
So when you say federation, what are you thinking?
Oh, instead of aggregating metadata, having the people who have already aggregated it provide it, so you can spread your search out. Like you can do a distributed Sparkle query, as an example. It's one of the things that came up at least in more than one session. And then the other time I'd throw in is he mentioned the word being altruistic, and I'll just say showing a amount of work put in for amount of value gotten out, where if people see that like just a little bit of metadata gives them so much more discoverability, and then maybe even eases some use of tools, that basically inspiring users to jump in
federated
discoverability, bandwagon.
Could be federated altruism as a next motto for EarthCube.
Well, we can call them separate things now, but see,
I think we also kind of generally agreed that having some kind of top-level organization for repos that are involved with a project, there was a lot of different mechanisms as to how to do that, but most people thought it was useful.
Great. Any other takeaways there? All righty. Well, thanks everybody for participating. We still have some time left. If anybody has any other questions or wants to work on putting something in the resource registry, we'll walk through it with you.
I've seen you do it. It's not that bad. Yeah, no.
It's not like hitting yourself on the head with a stick, right?
You could probably get through half of it in the time left over if it's small enough.
Yeah. You don't have to go and look up all your links and everything.
Yeah. Okay. If you had most of your or some of it available. Yeah.
Well, most of the fields are not mandatory, so it could be quick.
Of course, if you only fill out the mandatory fields, you don't end up with a very useful record. But all right. Well, if there's no other thoughts or comments, thanks everybody, and it's been a great meeting. And see you in the next Zoom session.